Today, I wanted to talk about my reintroduction back into fantasy book reading, and that would be incomplete if I did not mention one of my really good friends, Jake. He has been trying to get me into making sure I've been reading a little bit more fantasy before bed or just doing that in general before going to work or whatever it is. He's mentioned how helpful it's been to him, so shout out to Jake. Earlier this year, my wife and I, and like late 2024, my wife Abby and I, we were watching through Harry Potter, and this is our second time going through the movie series. It's still very fresh to me because I was one of the early 2000 Christian households that was not allowed to watch Harry Potter because of wands, witches, mentions of wizards. It was just an automatic X name. And yet, Dragon Ball Z was cool, WWE was cool, Courage the Cowardly Dog was cool, Yu-Gi-Oh wasn't cool. My parents they were slick. They knew what was cool, what wasn't cool. Pokemon was cool. So it was this whole teeter-tottering type thing. During our last viewing, I was just asking Abby a lot of questions, whether it was about spells or if it was about different plot points. And over and over again, she was just telling me about how much she enjoyed reading the books growing up and how the books just go into greater detail. And obviously, you're going to miss out on a lot of that when you go from book to movie. And everybody knows this. So it was during our watch through when I decided I will take the leap and I will read Harry Potter for the first time at 26 years old and see how I feel about it. Once I officially decided that I would start reading Harry Potter's and the Philosopher's Stone, I had to think about what the vehicle would be for me to read it. So I checked on Facebook Marketplace, I was looking on Amazon to look at, do I get a set? But I knew that I just wanted to start it immediately, so I landed actually on doing audiobooks. And so for a quick side note on audiobooks, if we look historically and look at oral tradition, look at how humans evolved, and a lot of experts are saying this, especially through storytelling, there's something really in essence communal about thinking about what an audiobook or a story can do when it's told from a lot of people or told from someone else. I say this to say because when a lot of people hear audiobooks, we just start to pit things against each other. The same way people will say, is water wet or is a hot dog a sandwich? A lot of people will say, is listening to an audiobook really reading? And instead of asking that question, the question I would like to pose instead is, where are you retaining your information? And so if you're reading through page by page, and then you close that book and you're like, I don't even know what I read, versus you're hearing somebody talk about it. There's great voice inflection. There's something unique that's happening. Your mind is imagining all these things are going down and you're retaining that information. Does the vehicle really matter and what we call it? And I get it, absolutely. There's something amazing about the tactile grabbing and holding of a book. There was a study done, and in the school, she was pitting that together, an audiobook versus a physical book versus reading a book and hearing the book at the same time just to see retention. And there wasn't a lot that was in disparity for that. For me, where it came in handy was for my commute to and from work instead of listening to a podcast, which a lot of the times I've been listening to a lot of theological podcasts or crime podcasts, whatever it is. And your mind, it can just be too much. You don't really realize it up until you just listen to something light. So the audiobook that I listened to was narrated by Stephen Fry. Did it, boy. Stephen Fry. One heck of an audio storyteller, reader, everything. I know I'm mad late to all this. Like I said, it's 2025, 26 years old. Many of you read this series when you were 10 through, 18 years old. Many of you probably have already listened to the Stephen Fry book. And then there's another person who I know also is pretty famous for doing the audiobooks too. And yes, I'm late to it and I'm just discovering it, but it has been absolutely amazing to be able to listen to Harry Potter in that form and see what I think about it. I would honestly do a lot of it on YouTube because I wasn't going to pay for it on Spotify. So YouTube was great. And I'm okay doing that, finding it online free in some other vehicle, because if it's free on the public library, then all's good and it's years old. So it'd either be YouTube or on SoundCloud. And like I said, being able to then kind of see the disparity or the differences from the movie and then in the book was just really fun. There's just a lot of little things. And also just the quotes. It's awesome from an adult lens to be able to look and see how J.K. Rowling was cooking the whole time for kids, and yet there's a lot of the adult themes that were in there. Two of my favorite quotes probably came from Gandalf. I say Gandalf, Dumbledore. I'm always doing that. I'm always confusing the two. Two of my favorite quotes came from Dumbledore. One of them was after they were singing Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy, Hoggy, Hogwarts. He was just talking about how music is basically greater than any magic that they could do within those walls. And he had another famous quote just talking about death and just saying that death is but life's greatest adventure, next greatest adventure. Well, the audiobook probably took me 3-4 days of just driving and maybe some extra driving and just listening. But from that audiobook, it sparked me then recognizing and realizing how much of an awesome break it's been to read fantasy. And so my next journey, a big journey, began. That big journey, of course, could be nowhere else but the classic tried and true journey down to Middle Earth. And so I ended up deciding it would finally be time for me to take the plunge and go with a movie series that I've watched so many times growing up, whether it's sleepovers with my homie Jake, sleepovers with my homie Jay. I have a big amount of love for this series. I've never seen the Hobbit movies, and so what I decided to do was get the set. This was $15 on Amazon. I would read The Hobbit, watch the Hobbit movies, then read the Lord of the Rings books, and then rewatch the Lord of the Rings movies. So I have had such a blast during this journey. Now seeing a different perspective and just kind of seeing how Tolkien broke down Middle Earth and started a really amazing legacy with this series. So this past week with The Hobbit, I would basically either read my second half of my lunch break, I would read once I got home from work, maybe play a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus, and then I'd read, or I'd just read sitting next to Abby while she's doing whatever she's doing. I knew that I wanted to get soft cover, and I knew that I liked something that was nice and small and compact. Now, the strength of that is just that you're able to, hold it wherever and transport nice and easy. It could fit in your pocket if you have nice big pants. The downside is just how intense the font is. So I'll just show you right there how wild that ends up looking. So honestly, when I first opened it up, that was a little bit intimidating. And then also, since it is a little bit smaller, once you do start opening it and holding it and trying to navigate, which the pages are super soft, it smells great, it looks great. But once you start flipping through, you'll see my spine there is starting to get some of those crevices. So you're kind of holding it in one hand or another. Sometimes the pages are just like a little bit uncomfortable, or they split in an uneven way. I don't know if that makes sense. Like you can kind of see there, it's just split a little bit. So The Hobbit was definitely something that took me off guard in order to kind of see Bilbo's journey. This is by no means a book review. I just wanted to mention, though, that for me going in, knowing what I knew from Lord of the Rings, and then to go back in time and to see where it all started, and it was just so much fun. There's also a pretty interesting quote where at one point Bilbo said, "The only way out is down." And that kind of reminded me of the horror movie, the thriller movie, As Above, So Below, where they say the only way out is through. I might have flipped those two. But the amount of courage, the amount of character building, the amount of humor, lightheartedness, descriptions of food, that got me off bat because I love food, I love cooking. And so I have 2 or 3 pages at a time that are now mentioning how much Bilbo loves food, how much he loves bacon and eggs and clotted cream, and how much he loves to drink and everything. Just found a lot of interesting relation to think about what it means to be somebody who is then brought to an unexpected journey, who maybe has questionings of themselves, questions of courage in their own ability, and then to find strength in themselves, strength in numbers, in community around them, and then just to persevere. So for me, I've just had such a great time. I wanted to also show and compare, as Abby is rereading through the Percy Jackson series. Once again, just seeing kind of the font and the space and the spacing in the book, like that's such an easier read. And yet I just love the very small, compact size of this series, and I love that they're soft and not hardback. So yeah, not a book review at all, but more just like a mini thesis just in defense of audiobooks, and then a mini thesis on defense of books in general, no matter the vehicle, as long as you are comprehending, you're moving forward and allowing your mind to think of what these characters look like. You're exercising something that's different than, I'd say, watching TV or watching a movie. So I'll end off with this: read a book. Thank you.